Now, postmodernism is a movement that began after World War II. From the end of World War II to the present, and postmodernism has had a tremendous impact and influence on architecture, art, economics, history, literature, philosophy, etc. Postmodernism is a movement that in some ways, in some fields of endeavor, has been admirable, but in others has been disastrous, especially in philosophy and history, because what it essentially does is it throws out the notion of right and wrong. For a postmodernist, there really is no right and wrong. It's only what is situational and contextual for you as an individual. Basically, anything goes in postmodernism. I'm oversimplifying in this seminar, but that is the essence of postmodernism. Here's some of the perils of it. There isn't really any absolute truth. Well, that means I'm not really responsible for my decisions, if that's true. Truth is relative, constructed, contextual, situational, flexible, malleable, evolutionary, etc. Anything goes. If it feels good, do it. It opens the doorway to an abdication of personal responsibility, the consequences of which, especially long-term, are disastrous. Nihilism. Nothing really matters. My generation, I lived through some of the thick of postmodernism growing up. Queen, the Bohemian Rhapsody, what do they sing? This is the real life, right? Nothing really matters, right? Nothing really matters to me. I didn't say it, Queen did. But Queen's lyrics there are a good example of postmodernism in pop culture. Now, postmodernism, we would like to think that it's dead, and we weren't the first ones to seal the casket on this. Edward Dawkes, a British novelist, wrote an article almost 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and says the dominant idea of our age, and I'm quoting him now, postmodernism, has a death date. He called it September 24th, 2011. Now, this might sound rather arbitrary, but he tagged this to a specific event. The Queen Victoria and Prince Albert Museum in London was opening up its first ever international type world-class display on postmodernism, insinuating that maybe this is starting to creep into the pages of history. That's why he places that date on it. Dawkes says, quote, "The postmodern solution will no longer do as a response to the world we now find ourselves in." And he puts forth a solution. He calls it the Age of Authenticity, which brings in specificity, values, and authenticism, the gold standard. Now, the Age of Authenticity, freedom focus exists to promote the philosophical or the self-help component of this brand new age. We'll leave architecture and politics and economics and pop culture and journalism and all the rest to experts in those fields. We'll stay focused on what we're good at. Here are some of the key components of the Age of Authenticism. Self-honesty and organizational transparency. Once again, it always begins with the self and then becomes an outgrowth into the larger entities of which selves are a part. Equating it with self-actualization rather than deviance from traditional values and pragmatic mores. See, a postmodernist would argue, I am being authentic because I'm doing my own thing. And that is being authentic to my own wishes or desires or inclinations. An authenticist, on the other hand, would say, well, wait a second. What about duty to self and others? What about the consequences of my decisions? What about the things that come tomorrow from what I do today? And as a result, I am no longer shooting for just becoming the most unique person I possibly can be, but becoming the most fully actualized person. And we will return to this term later when we introduce the Sal theory. Acquiescing that truth is, and that in the words of, and these aren't my words actually, this comes from a rock band called Arcade Fire. Anyone heard of that rock band in here? Several of you. Okay, this is lyrics right out of one of their songs. Some things are good and some things are right. I agree with you, Arcade Fire. We hope for a more fully flowering of this age in coming years and decades. Now, authenticists from the past, I want to share with you some individuals who, in my estimation, based on my study of history, can qualify as being genuine authenticists. Because there were many authentic people from the past, even in some of the darkest periods of world history. And here's just some of them. For those of you that may not know, William Wilberforce is the driving force behind the end of the slave trade in Great Britain, decades before we accomplished the same in America. The Brits had us beat by a long shot there, thanks to William Wilberforce. Abraham Lincoln later made it a fact for us. Thank the good Lord for that. As a self-action leadership expert, I highly encourage people to study history, find authenticists in history, and study their lives, because it will empower you with a vision of what this means and help you to better be able to practice this in your own life.